All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wealth Edit Wednesday. Today, we're so excited to have Christie Dondero Bettwy. I told her name was like a tricky spot, but anyway, I'm so excited to have Christie. And you know what? Last week, I had somebody that on Wealth Edit Wednesday that I'd met on the phone, and now you're our second guest that we've met through talking to others around us, you know, that have connections with the Wealth Edit. And so it's so fun to have these new relationships that we're making along the way. But Christie is with Rock Recovery in Washington, D.C., or outside of Washington. Are you in Washington, D.C.?
We're technically right outside, so we're in Arlington, Virginia, just across the bridge. Yeah,
just across the bridge, but close enough. And Christie just has an amazing story and is doing something really great in the community and providing resources for so many who are struggling with disordered eating and other things, just healthy lifestyle decisions. And so anyway, Christie, we're so excited to have you here today. And I am so excited for you to share your stories with our members. And today's Christie's birthday, so y'all wish her a happy birthday.
Extra bonus. Aww. Thank you. I do love birthday attention. Let's be real. I got my free Starbucks this morning. It's been great. So.
Well, maybe just start off and just share a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, what a journey. So I've been in the DC area now for 11 years. I do live in the burbs now. I was in DC proper for 10 years, and then, you know, marriage, COVID, a combination of things pushed me out to the burbs. So it's been a lovely place. But I really moved to DC to get involved with Rock Recovery, the nonprofit that I'm now the executive director for. And I moved here when I was just a volunteer. So I'm personally recovered from an eating disorder. I struggled for about a decade from 13 to 23. And when I went through recovery, kind of a longer story for another podcast, but when I went through treatment, I realized that a lot of people didn't have access to the tools or the finances they needed to get well. And my parents were lovely and supportive and put money in my account every week since I was working a very underpaid job at the age of 23, right out of college. And a couple of years into my recovery, I ran into someone that I had met at a support group years earlier. And she was right where I was 3 years ago, and she hadn't seemed to have made any progress. And it really shook me to think, wow, I can't believe how far I've come. And I can't believe that she's still so stuck. And the big difference that I saw was that I had the resources to pay for treatment and she didn't. And that's really what kept her stuck. So that put me on a path where I wanted to do something about it. It felt unfair that I had this access that other people didn't have. And so I made it really my life's mission to go help increase access for people who didn't have mental health treatment and care. And I did some research, and through a combination of the Holy Spirit and the internet and a Google search, which often is how my life kind of changes, I found Rock Recovery, which had just been founded months earlier. This is back in 2010. And I was like, wow, this woman, Carrie Larson, our founder, was doing amazing things. She was providing sliding scale treatment, outpatient programming, bridging all these gaps. And I'd never seen anyone do it before. So I came up to DC for a wedding from North Carolina, met with her, and just fell in love with her vision and the organization. And I decided, yeah, I'm going to move here to volunteer and see what I can do to help the organization grow. Took a job as a consultant at PwC, which was great. I learned a lot. It was not for me in the long term, but after 2 years, was able to actually fundraise my own salary and come on staff in 2013 as Rock Recovery's first employee. So it's been amazing. It's been gratifying. It's been hard. There have been tears. There have been confusion. There have been so many feelings, but I hang out with therapists most of the day. So it's great. Lots of places to process them. So it's been really a wonderful journey. And when I look back on my career and kind of what brought me here, I'm just very grateful for what seemed to be random doors that opened and closed, but really brought me to where I think I'm meant to be.
I love that intro. Lauren and I were kind of talking about some of that last night, about how oftentimes, you know, our path is just not straight. And I think that's the truth for a lot of women too. But, you know, I also loved how you said, you know, Google searches in the Holy Spirit. I mean, it just works that way sometimes, you know. I know in my life I have seen that at play for sure.
I Google searched when I was looking for a job. My husband is in ministry, and when he told me that we were moving from Washington, D.C. to Beaufort, South Carolina, I literally Googled like best jobs for working moms, and financial advisor came up, and here I am, I mean, truly that's like what happened.
Hey, look how it turned out, right? Like, it's a beautiful thing. You never
It's
know.
a beautiful
Google will
thing.
bring it. So that's good.
Okay, so one of the things that you talked about, and I'd love to just touch on this and how Rock Recovery addresses this, but it is, we always say wealth is about so much more than just money, but oftentimes as events happen in our lives, our savings and are used to address, I have a brother that's been through recovery of alcoholism, and it's expensive. I mean, it's a thing that everybody has to come together and say, how can we help? So how do y'all help people that need help but don't have the finances to do so?
Yeah, I mean, one of Rock's, so we call ourselves Rock for short. It's, the hip thing to do. So one of Rock's main thing is just bridging barriers, which stigma for mental health is certainly one of those barriers that people access. Accessibility, being able to get someplace. COVID and virtual services have really helped with that. But the number one barrier that we really see is finances. And oftentimes mental health treatment is not covered by insurance, especially for a specialist who works with eating disorders. And treatment is, you need an expert, you need a specialist, you need the fancy letters behind someone's name and someone who's really been trained in this. And so what we see is clients who either try to work with a general therapist who just aren't equipped to work with someone in this kind of acute struggle, or people who just can't access therapy or anything at all and are just reading books and trying to figure it out on their own. And, I always say you need three things in recovery: community, experts, and faith, or something to keep you grounded, something to really, your values, to show you who and whose you are and what you value. So if you can't access that expert, that the therapist, the dietitians, the clinical stuff, it's really, really hard to get well. And so for us, we do all sliding scale services. We do charge clients something because it's good to have skin in the game. I really believe in investing in your own recovery and investing in your own life. I worked for Habitat for Humanity for a number of years, and this was always how we did it. So I feel like I've learned a lot from that organization and really brought it to Rock. But clients pay something that, it might be $5 a week, whatever it might be, when if this was a treatment program offered in the open market, it would be $250 a week. So we're really making it accessible for people and working with them. We do a lot of group clinical treatment programs, meal support. So we gather together for meals, we do body image therapy groups, and then we do individual sliding scale counseling one-on-one. And then separate from our clinical programs, we also have faith support programs for people who want to bring in spirituality or their faith into recovery, because it's hard to do that. It's hard to really find a place that can do both. So we added these programs for people who want to have that more holistic care as well.
Well, I know that, we see often, especially in the community today, how hard right now, especially, it's hard to find a therapist. I mean, it seems like there's so many people that are struggling with, mental health issues, obviously because of COVID, but just, there's been so many changes. And I know that that's been difficult. Do y'all have people that are on staff with you? I mean, is that the pool of people that you're pulling from, or have y'all also had a hard time finding people?
I always joked that we've always been very popular. For many, many years, we've had a waiting list. But when COVID hit, our inquiries and people who are filling out our program applications went up by 420% those first 3 months. I mean, I was talking to my colleague about it yesterday and just kind of shuddering. I was like, for someone that preaches self-care and all these things, like, I was a hypocrite. I mean, we were working crazy hour days and just, I remember I was in my 500 square foot studio in DuPont Circle in DC, like on the bathroom floor, because it was the only place with doors. So my husband couldn't hear these phone calls with clients I was on. And I mean, it was a lot. So we've always been busy, and we've always been unique in the programs we provide. But since COVID, the need has just skyrocketed. Isolation is a huge thing that brings people to need more mental health care. And then just with food, going to the grocery store. A lot of our clients cried before COVID going to the grocery store, especially early COVID. That was so stressful. Access was different. We're at home. So the need has only increased. And for us, we've seen a very, very consistent doubling year over year of what we've seen people reaching out to us for help. And that's true for depression and anxiety as well, which the majority of our clients also struggle with, depression and or anxiety. So, life is hard, and it's definitely been a little harder these last couple of years. And it's been hard to find the coping skills and just the things to kind of get people through.
What, I guess my question would be, like, as someone that, so we know that we've gone through a collective grief as a nation, as a world. but the way that impacts individuals is different. So what are some of like the warning signs that we can see with a friend or with a family member that we may be able to look out for, and potentially encourage them towards programming?
Yeah, everyone's story of their own journey is really unique and different. So it can be tricky to find one or two things to look for. And one thing I like to always mention is that eating disorders and disordered eating can affect people of all shapes and sizes. So I think in our brains, we want to think, oh, we should only worry about people when they're too thin. And that's just not the case. People of all shapes and sizes struggle with disordered eating, whether it be anorexia, which is restriction, or binge eating, which is, of course, loss of control, large quantity of food eating. So there's lots of different types of disordered eating, and many different people struggle. Unfortunately, eating disorders don't discriminate. I kind of wish they would just pick a population, but they really affect a wide variety of people. And they are biopsychosocial illnesses. So there's a genetic component to how they develop and why they develop. And then there's environmental factors, perhaps a trauma someone's gone through, different changes in life, different things can really trigger disordered eating for people. But one of the big triggers is loss of control and coping. And of course, with COVID, food in America especially is one of the only things we can control. And there was a lot of pressure on us to, have this great post-pandemic body or do this thing. And I think people either got fixated on food, either from a control perspective or from a coping perspective to make them feel better, which life was hard. That's totally fair. There was a lot going on. But signs to look for, sometimes weight changes can be a sign, dramatic weight loss or body changes. We don't say you should ever comment on someone's bodies, but you might notice some unhealthy changes that are happening pretty quickly. Withdrawal, a lot of the things to look for are really social cues. So you used to get dinner with friends, now your friend skips out on dinners but comes after, or they come to dinner and say they ate before, or something around food has changed. They're not really dipping their hand in the communal pot anymore. They're sort of bringing their own food, doing their own thing, and isolating a bit more. And then just different personality shifts, stress, if someone's working out a lot more, maybe injuries and kind of pushing past them, and just really preoccupation with food. I mean, I think a lot of us as women, unfortunately, we're kind of taught to notice what other people are doing, how they look, what they're eating. We're kind of taught to compare in a lot of ways, which is a hard thing to unlearn. But sometimes if people are really preoccupied with what's on their plate or other people's plates, they're making lots of comments, like disparaging comments about their body or about food, labeling it good or bad. Those are just some warning signs to kind of look for that something might be going on.
We've just recently, I've gone through it in our family with my younger daughter, who's a teenager and in junior high, has a friend that's struggling with it. And it was an interesting, to now looking back, a lot of the warning signs were there, but because we had not been familiar with that in the past, it all, now we're like, okay. But it's been interesting to have that dialogue with the teenage girls as well right now, where there does seem to be, not just with our age and adults, we realize that there's this younger population that's looking at Instagram, looking, at TikTok and all those things, and have these distorted body images, and you want to just like take their phone away from them and say, no more, this isn't real. We try to combat it in so many different ways, but what would your advice be for like talking also to this younger generation that, I feel like maybe Lauren and I in our 40s at least had some solid years where we didn't have social media.
We were lucky.
We were lucky to not have that, but I always just feel a little bit at a loss. Like, I don't know if I have the right words to say and how to think through that. What are some advice that you give?
Yeah, it's tough. And my husband, he's a youth pastor by trade, and like teenagers scare me, man. I don't know. I feel like they're wonderful, but they're smart, and when you talk about warning signs to look for, it's like moodiness, these things, and you're like, welcome to being a teenager, right? Like, welcome.
Right, yeah.
How do you know what's normal or what's not normal? And I have gotten to speak to lots of different students, which has been really fun for me. They make me the most nervous, but it's also really fun to speak to the teens. And I think what it comes down to is that comparison thing, and really the idea of values. So we talk a lot about self-esteem, self-care, all of these kinds of buzzy words that can feel kind of trivial, but if you drill deeper, there's a lot you can do with value and substance. So the idea is really teaching our teens what gives them value, because if we don't teach them that, they will look to the likes or the TikToker looking like this or comparing this or being better than that, right? It's very easy to compare, to try to figure out who we are and what gives us value. And that's really a losing game. You know, we call it compare and despair a lot. And I love that quote, that comparison is the thief of joy. So we talk a lot about how this wide base of self-esteem, if your whole life is, I have to weigh this certain amount, look this certain way, the day you step on the scale and that number's above that number, you crumble. But if you have this wide base where you realize, wow, I'm valuable because I'm kind to my friends and I try really hard and I'm generous and I'm nice and I'm funny and whatever the unique qualities are to somebody that make them them, and the things that are really valuable and substantive, those are the things we want to teach our teens to be thinking about, not the fleeting things, not the comparison things, not the grades, right? Same thing. I have to get all A's, I get a B plus, I'm shattered. So we're just trying to teach teens and to build up more of that, just that muscle of stability, so they know who they are and they know what makes them valuable. So it's not about achievements, it's not about looks, it's not about being popular. We're teaching them kind of that deeper truth to what makes them valuable.
Yeah, so true. And but it's so hard too.
Yeah.
I always say, I had one of my best friends and I, we always say, you know, we've spent a long, I mean, I have 2 girls, Lauren has 3 girls. And I was telling her, I was like, this is coming, but you know, you spend so much time talking about a lot of those things and teaching your children that it's okay to be different. It's okay to, you know, to have different value sets, to find your worth, not in your appearance or your achievements. And then all of a sudden they get to be teenagers and you realize, hey, they're different than everybody else. And then you realize being different is hard.
It's hard.
And, you know, so then you have to flip the switch and be like, I love that you're different, you know, like this is where we've, you know, been going your whole life, you know, but now I've set you up for this really difficult, you know, working through high school, you know, feeling different than everybody, and or not everybody, obviously there's many other parents that are trying to do the same thing, but it's an interesting thing. It's like you try so hard and then you're like trying to set them up for success as adults, but as teenagers, it's just really hard, you know?
Oh yeah. And I even think back, so my eating disorder, I was a ballerina, and then coupled with, you know, peers and kind of noticing, oh, the thinner girls were more popular and these different things were happening. I mean, it's one thing to say, it's hard to live it, especially when you're a teenager. And I look back, early intervention is one of the highest indicators of recovery. And for me, because my eating disorder was pretty under the radar, I struggled with kind of atypical bulimia and anorexia. So it wasn't necessarily, and back then, you know, it wasn't in the 90s, it wasn't as easy to spot. Like not everyone was as educated or thinking about it. Therapy wasn't as cool, unfortunately. Now therapy is getting cool, I think, a little bit. But when I look back on those times, I'm like, I think people could have certainly helped me get through it faster or had different, I don't know, baseline things. But at some point, sometimes I'm someone who has to just go through stuff. Like I learned the hard way. I don't know why. I just like have to learn my lessons. And so I think for me, I don't know. I wonder what could have prevented it or helped me, because part of it was just being a teenager was hard and it was just sort of the environment that I was in. But I do think certainly with early intervention and some other tools, I could have gotten through it in my teens instead of in my 20s.
Mm-hmm. So did you talk to your family about it, or how did you talk to us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, you know, I think because disordered eating and body image, like it's so common to be in and I'm not trying to bash women, you know, I love ladies. Our whole rock is like, we're all women, as women live for days. We've got lots of clients, lots of staff. We have one man on our board of 10 people and like all ladies. So, you know, very pro women, but I feel like we're taught again to compare and to sort of critique. And so, and we're taught to really bash our bodies. Like it's so normal to be in a group of people and kind of say like, oh, I don't like this about myself. And someone else chimes in and is like, oh, you're fine, but I hate this about me, right? It kind of turns into these cycles. So I think because our culture can be so disordered, I didn't notice I had a problem. I thought I just like couldn't quite keep my diet. I thought I was a little weird with food. I just thought if I could just be a little thinner, I'd be fine. Or I just kind of thought if I could get this together, I'd be fine. I wasn't putting together that my behaviors were pretty extreme and disordered because it was somewhat uncommon for people to not like their bodies, for people to be eating really weird diet plans, right? It was very normal. I read Self magazine from the age of like 11. So I think it was just really normal to be on a diet and to not like your body. And so I didn't realize I had an eating disorder until I went to an eating disorder support group, which I know sounds weird because you're like, well, why would you go to a support group if you don't think you have an eating disorder? But I had gone to this church right out of college. A cute boy at a bar asked me to go to church, which is how I came to faith. And I'm like, way to go, God, you know how to trick me. And so I went to this church and there was a support group being run for eating disorders. And I was like, I don't have an eating disorder, but I had kind of been struggling more with binge eating at that point than with restriction, and the binging really scared me. So I was like, I bet this course will help me stop this weird food thing so I can lose more weight. So sure, I'll go to this course. So I always joke, God tricked me twice, but it just was one of those interesting things where as I was sitting in the support group, there's teaching. It's actually something we run now for Rock Recovery. It's called New ID. I'm running it tonight. We're on week 3 of 6. And the first week is all about what are eating disorders and what is freedom. And as the teacher was kind of going through the points of what disordered eating is, I remember thinking like an expletive and being like, I have that. Like, I have that. Why did no one tell me? So there's just, I think this, I don't even know if it's denial, but I think it's hard for us sometimes to internalize what's going on. It can be normal to kind of put our head down and just go. And sometimes if we don't really stop and think about what we're doing, we just kind of keep doing it. So that was really how I realized I had an eating disorder. I was definitely tricked into it, but I'm glad I was.
Oh, I love that. So tell us a little bit about the new ID program and how we can help if we have somebody that's struggling, or if we're struggling, like how do we get engaged?
Yeah, so New ID is actually a great option because our clinical programs are limited by state where our therapists are licensed just because of various laws. So we have clinical programs that are in Virginia, DC, and California right now. We're hoping to expand that. We're fundraising to add more staff and to add more states. So that's kind of our plan. But our faith support programs, which New ID falls into that faith support program, anyone is welcome, but there is a Christian foundation to these groups, but they're available to anyone, anywhere. We've got people from different countries all over the United States. We've got lots of time zones on these meetings. And right now, the course I'm running has people ranging from ages 14 to 65 because people of all ages struggle with this. And so it's a great program. It's 6 weeks long. It's an hour and a half each week. There's teaching on various topics that are relevant to recovery and health and freedom. And then testimonials from people who are recovered, discussion group time to kind of process, and then we close in prayer. So it's just a really neat holistic thing. And a lot of our clients do this on top of clinical work, so therapy, or they've gone to a residential program or done something else. But I'm literally the poster child for New ID. It saved my life. The woman who created it became one of my best friends. She sang when I walked down the aisle at my wedding, it was a whole thing. But just this program, I think it's so deep and it gets through the underlying stuff, because an eating disorder often is coping. It is this external thing, but there's often deeper reasons as to why. And New ID is great because it really gets to the why. And I think the other good thing about New ID is that people of different backgrounds and different types of struggles come as well. So we use the term disordered eating and eating disorder somewhat interchangeably, because we don't believe you have to have a super clinically diagnosable cookie cutter eating disorder to need help or to be kind of stuck in this pattern you don't want to be in. So people who struggle with whether it be dieting or restriction or binging, it's really a good course for anybody. And this one's closed because we're halfway through it, but we're starting a holiday support group next month, and then our next New ID course in January. So if you go to our website, it's just rockrecoveryed.org, and you can get more information about that.
And what's the age range of people that participate?
We do say 14 is the cutoff. We've had 12-year-olds come before, because you can have an old soul with 12-year-olds sometimes. So we do typically try to keep it at 14, but sometimes if a parent comes with the child, we let people as young as 12 come. And then, there's no limit to the age. So it's really a wide variety, and it's mostly women. We serve people of all genders, but we find that really women are the ones who come to us. So that's typically who's in the groups.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So a question I have is just like, as an executive director of a nonprofit, I know that you probably wear many hats, and one of the things that strikes me about you, and I think a lot of women do this, is like oftentimes, our passions come out of our hurts, the things that we struggle with then bring forth a new passion that we have for helping others, teaching them what we've learned by going through it ourselves, and a little bit about what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, kind of how that fuels what you're doing. I'd love for you to share a minute on that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I love the idea of kind of purpose out of pain. And I think that's the redemption that I've really experienced in my own struggle is, in a way, I wouldn't take it back. I'm really grateful for it because there's been such fruit and such redemption of going through something, coming out the other side and getting to help other people. So one of my favorite things I get to do is lead programs like New ID as a lay person, as a volunteer. And because you get to see people, and I get to be that annoying person who's telling you, you know, freedom is possible, recovery is possible. When someone told me that 15 years ago, I was like, that sounds not so possible. Like, I don't know that I believe you. I think you might be a liar. So it's really fun just to kind of get to be helping people from a place where I was to kind of come forward. And we've served so many hundreds of clients, and I've gotten to really see the life come back for them. Unfortunately, the majority of my job is not that. It's really fundraising, administrative. We're getting ready for our first audit. It's a whole thing. I was not built for spreadsheets, and I feel like most days I'm elbow deep and eyeball deep in spreadsheets on a typical basis. So we're a small team of 3 full-time employees. We're hoping to grow to 5 in the next 6 months, but we all wear a lot of hats. So I do a lot of our finance, administration, strategic planning, random event things, manage our team. We have 6 different contract therapists who are on our team as well, in addition to our full-time employees. So we work together with them quite a bit. And then a lot of our work is just fundraising, because there's a huge gap in what our clients can pay and what it costs to deliver excellent care. And we want to deliver excellent care because people deserve it. And so that's really what a lot of my day is trying to speak, spread the word. We do different wellness workshops with corporations, talks at universities, schools, churches, and then trying to raise awareness and raise funding to help more clients.
Yeah. Well, we are really grateful that you came on today. And something that we ask everybody that comes on is why you said yes to the Wealth Edit. And we're really glad you did.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I said yes from our friend of a friend connection initially, Emily, but also just because I love what you all do. I love this idea of what our resources and our wealth is, and how it affects our lives and how it plays out in our daily stories. And I always used to say when I traveled for work, I pitied the person on a plane who asked what I did up for a living, because I love a captive audience. Talk about rock recovery. I just love our clients and love this mission. So I am always thrilled to get to shout it from the rooftops and share it with people who care. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, we've loved hearing your story, and I just think it's such an important topic. And, you know, it does play into the whole, you know, like a healthy, wealthy life. You know, at the Wealth Edit, we talk about this all the time, you know, so much about recovery in life and like going through the hard times, whether it be a disorder or of financial troubles or personal struggles. Like oftentimes it's the community, you know, and you mentioned that, you know, just surrounding ourselves with others who understand and are going through the same thing. So we are just thankful to know about Rock. Now that I'm going to call it the cool name.
Yeah, you can be cool with us.
That's
Absolutely.
right. And Lauren and I said, when we come up to DC, we want to come visit.
We did.
And see
Come for show and tell.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and happy birthday. Thank you for sharing
happy
part of your
birthday.
day with us. We appreciate it. And we look forward to keeping in touch. So
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.